All right, we are live. Okay, we're live on YouTube, and now we are live. We're going to start the recording in three, in two, and one. Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Tonight, we are very honored to be joined by Bill Krebs, courtesy there of our great friend Aaron Kalinowski. Bill, you have had quite the journey, as you call yourself Mr. Trouble. Here comes Mr. Trouble. But I really want to philosophize with you and allow you to tell everything you want to tell me. And I also want to allow you to not tell anything you do not want to tell me. But kind of to structure it a little bit, I would want you to first talk about your life, how you grew up, things you've accomplished and went through, and things like that. But then I understand that you've done a lot of advocacy against institutionalism and institutions. This is something that a lot of young people do not understand. So walk through the whole life story and maybe mention your knowledge and educate the world about what's really going on. So dig in, Bill Krebs. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bill Krebs. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where you call me, people call us self-advocates for people with intellectual disabilities. But I like to call myself Mr. Trouble because I don't like what the system does with people with disabilities. And I got the name one day coming out of a meeting, walking down the hall, and this lady looked at me and said, here's trouble. And I looked around and said, who the hell is she talking about in my head? But I didn't say it out in the open. And I realized it was me. So I took on the nickname Mr. Trouble. So every time I signed my name into one of my state meetings represent people with intellectual disabilities, I signed Bill Trouble Krebs. And people would say, why is trouble in the middle of your name? I said, trouble's in the middle of my name is because if trouble was here, things would be done. And if trouble wasn't here, things wouldn't be done. So watch out for trouble. And trouble's always in the middle. So that's why I put trouble in my middle of my name. Well, when I was a little kid, I kept to myself in grade school. Didn't talk much, didn't interact with the kids, other kids, didn't play with them, didn't share toys with them or nothing. This is kindergarten. There was no special education classes out there when I was a kid. So they told my parents, he'll grow out of it. Don't worry about it. He's like every other kid. He could be shy. Well, guess what happened? They came back to my parents and said, can we keep him for another year? And my parents said, what? Yeah, we want to keep him in kindergarten for another year. My parents said, let us talk to him and see what he says. Well, lo and behold, I did stay back. And people said, why would you want to stay back? What do you take? When you're in kindergarten, you get free naps, didn't have to do homework. And the best part about it was the free milk and cookies. Yes, free milk and cookies. Do you remember them days getting snacks, free milk and cookies? That's what I loved about it. So I told my parents I would stay back. Well, comes to the next year, you get put up because you're too old to be in kindergarten. You go to first grade, same thing. I sat in back of the class, didn't interact with my students, my friends, didn't interact with the teacher. So the teacher thinks you're shy. You do your homework, take it, bring it home. I struggled. My dad worked. My mother didn't understand things, so she really couldn't help us kids out. But my dad would come home from work and try to help us sit there. He was the working man. They told my parents we had to keep him back for another year. So I stood back for another year, but there was no milk and cookies in first grade. So I stayed back. And then I got put up to second grade. Same theory. I didn't keep up with the regular kids. Remember, the rights to education wasn't no rights for people with disabilities because we weren't educated. Got put up again. Got to third grade. Well, I moved up again. Fourth grade, didn't get held back this time. Fifth grade, back in fifth grade is the right education was formatted. It was taking kids who were troublemakers, kids that didn't understand things, the kids who were slow, Down syndrome people, blind people, deaf people, and put them out in other schools that weren't our schools. I remember I was the first one to get on the school bus and the last one to get dropped off. And this school bus only had kids with special education. Here I am in the part of Philadelphia was called the Northeast. They shipped me to another school that was about an hour away. I remember it was like yesterday getting on that yellow school bus, have my little Snoopy bag, bring it to school. You were the first kids in when you were in special ed, and you were the first kids to get let go. We were self-contained. So you talk about rights to education for people with disabilities. Guess there was no rights for us. And when I had to go to the bathroom, the aide walked me to the bathroom. I was so mad, when that happened in junior high school. I asked her, did she want to shake it for me if I had to go to the bathroom? Boy, I was starting to be a hellraiser. I knew there was something different. So, like I said, and they finally tested me. And with a psychologist, my parents told me there'll be a head shrinker. And I said, oh no, I grabbed my head. Thought they're going to shrink my head. Is my head that big headed? I didn't know better. I didn't know what a head shrinker was. He labeled me with an intellectual disability, development delays, and a learning disability. And I was cursed for life. When you're labeled with a disability, it was like Hitler did to the Jews. He put a tattoo on them, and they knew what toxication camp you were. When you were labeled with a disability, it seemed like everybody knew who you were and what you were. Through those days, were hard. I struggled, couldn't keep up. One day we were sitting there. I remember in high school getting picked on. My friend he had a trachea. He couldn't really talk and defend himself. And this football guy used to come by and hit him with spitballs, and make fun of him. I stood up one day and told him off. That was the first time I really got a voice. Would you believe that? And they took me up to the principal's office, said I was causing trouble. I was having outbursts. They called my parents in. They told my parents, your kid must be on drugs or something. He's not like the other kids. And they said, what? He's not even out there with the regular kids. He's with his kids in the classroom. He don't go out to other classes. And that was called mainstream. Certain kids were allowed to get mainstream because they were pretty bright or pretty smarter than me. I didn't get mainstream. They told my parents you had to transfer them out to this thing called Girls High. So they told us to think it over, what would be best. And I'm thinking to myself all the way home, oh, in Philadelphia, Girls High. If you're from Philadelphia, if you know anything about small Girls High, daytime, it is a girls' high school. But at nighttime, when the girls are not there, I think it was on Mondays and Wednesdays, we had night school. And it was for all the troublemaker kids who can keep up with other kids. And they're going to ship me out there, but I didn't know at the time. So I thought, well, I'm going to Girls High. I'll be around all these girls instead of getting bullied by boys and other people. So I decided to go to Girls High. I waited at the bus stop for the bus, couldn't understand things. The bus driver would pick me up. I had a sign that told me where to drop me off. And I would see this guy, like I said, maybe Mondays and Wednesdays, the same bus driver. And he asked me what my name was. Your parents tell you when you're a kid, never talk to strangers. But I talked to this guy because he looked very friendly. And he accepted me. He didn't know I had a disability. I told him I was going there for night school, and he waited for me. Even if he was 15 minutes late, he waited for me to get on that bus because he knew he was like practically like the fifth bus to the last bus to take me where I need to go home. And then I I was in my class one day, and one of my classmates, was always smiling. He couldn't talk. He wanted to say something, and I wanted, and and then I had to go to the bathroom really bad. So I didn't know what to do. Either go in my pants or go somewhere. But I didn't know the class school that well. So I walked up to the teacher. She was too busy doing crosswords. These teachers that taught at night school really didn't teach you anything. You know, we were in a we were in a so-called math class, reading, and she was giving us things like follow the dots, and coloring and crowning and figuring things out. And that wasn't really what I came here for, I said to myself. So I asked her where the bathroom was, and she just pointed. She didn't look up who it was. And I said it again. She realized it was me. So she pointed, and I went down the hall, and these people with all kinds of disability were going down the basement. It was like the kids underneath the steps, or the people underneath the steps that Stephen King movie. They all sat around in a circle, talking to each other, complaining to each other, but listening to each other, suggesting different things. That's what I learned about self advocacy at down the basement where these guys were. Something inspired me, said, hey, if these guys want to do this and nobody's stopping them, I want to go back to school. I don't want to come here at nighttime. So I went back to my teacher and I said to her, I want to learn how to read. I come to this class, they said it was a reading class. She said, what? She looked up and said, oh, it's you, Bill. What did you say? Because she never heard me say anything. I said, I want to learn how to read. And that formatted me. She said, I'm going to bring some books in next week and we'll sit down. I said, what about that lady, the cooking teacher? That's supposed to be math. And all she does is bring us Twinkies or tasty cakes, drops it on her desk. Well, tell her you want to learn math. She's in the same school with me. She's a math teacher. Tell her. So when I went to my cooking class, I said, I heard you're a math teacher. She looked up and said, who are you? I said, Bill Krebs. Bill, who told you I was a math teacher? And I said the other teacher's name. She said, okay, Bill, you want to learn math? We'll learn math together. Do you see that tasty cake I gave you? Yes. Look on the back of it. And it was a recipe. How do you make things? How do you make a tasty cake? She said, that's math. Get to learn how to read that and I'll teach you more. So I fought back to get to high school. I got put back in high school. I fought to get the high school diploma. And you kids are lucky that you have the right education. You could do anything and get mainstream and have other research. Us people who are older than you remember them days when we didn't need it. We didn't even graduate. They gave us a certificate of appreciation, attended class. I fought to get my high school diploma. When I graduated at the age of 18, there was nothing out there. There was no transition years. Nobody told you what it was going to be like to graduate. You just sat home and did nothing. And, I watched Sesame Street with my mother to learn how to speak more and to learn a little bit more. You may think, well, grown up does this, but how else was we supposed to learn? Then I realized when you're in special education classes, you can go to the age of 21. So when the summer was over, instead of sitting home and doing nothing, I went back to school, fought to get my high school diploma, not once, not twice, 3 times. And I tell people I got 3 high school diplomas. Wow. And I tell them I got 3 class reunions to go. And I never went to my proms because I never had a chance because we were eligibility for that. I fought to get on the wrestling team because they told us we had make-believe grades and they weren't real grades. So after that, when you graduate, really, really graduate, and you're out in the real world, there's nothing for people with disabilities. At the time, they opened up day programs, what we call workshops. Use young kids won't know about that because they did piece rate. Just imagine every time you click a pen, you got a half a cent to do it. Just sit there all day for 8 hours. You have your lunch break for half an hour. You'll have a break in the morning, a break in the afternoon. So you're there between the times of six, you know, sorry, around 8:30 in the morning, getting done about 3. It wasn't fun. First 3 years was great. I tell people I used to put screws and nuts in a bag. It taught me how to dress myself. It taught me how to read a bus schedule, how to punch a clock. And I really punched a clock because I didn't know you had a card that you had to punch in. Because I realized, why would I punch a card while my peers see me here, the supervisors see me here, the counselors see me here, about 5 other people see me here. Why would I want to punch the clock? So I always come up and punch the clock with my fist. From that, it was a dead end job. They tell you, put these screws and the nuts in a bag and you get paid a penny a piece. The next 7 years doing that, they told us it was compatible employment. Who the heck would do something like put screws and nuts in a bag? I said to myself, who's screwing who and who's nuts for doing this? So we started the union to help the other employees who didn't make much to help them out. And that's what we did. When our state wanted a waiver of dollars for people like us who had intellectual disabilities, my mother didn't want no free handout. So they told me if either I take the waiver or I can leave this program. So I left the program. A week later, I got a postcard in the mail about that self advocacy group I told you earlier about. And that group was called Speaking for Herself. It's a cross disability organization who gets people with disabilities how to speak up and speak out about important issues. For me, I didn't know what it was. I get this postcard that I'm invited, and I go all the way up this place called City Line Avenue in Philadelphia. It's on the tip of Montgomery and Philadelphia. We went to this college where these people with disabilities would sit around, talk about issues. It was like group therapy without the therapy, without people judging you, because we all had some kind of disability, but we always helped each other to solve it together. So you should join, any one of you out there should join self advocacy and be part of it, you know?
I
So what
know.
else what? Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, no, I just wanted to come in here. I mean, this has been so far. I mean, this has been like one of the most compelling and one of the most interesting and most beautiful stories I've ever heard. And it really, although I'm blind and we don't have quite the same story, most of the majority of what you say is
Even blind
extreme.
people are even
Absolutely.
blind
Oh,
people
go
go to
ahead.
workshops. So they don't
Absolutely.
discriminate because you're blind and I'm not. A
Right.
workshop's a workshop set up for people with disabilities
It's
to
wrong either
humiliate
way.
them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Those would be those sheltered workshops, right, as we call them now, where you're pushed into a corner to do a menial, meaningless job. But you said it so beautifully, really, who's screwing who
Yeah.
and who's nuts for
Yeah.
doing, it's just you're immensely talented with your choice of words, and the way that you deliver your speech
Well,
is so
generation.
is
If you graduate and they want to put you in a workshop or a day program,
Sure.
no. Tell your parents, no. I want to go on with my life. I want a life that I could be proud of.
Right. So then what happened? So then you were in this shop for a while and then you
I
started,
got kicked out because
right?
I didn't go to, because for people with intellectual disabilities and developmental delays and Down syndrome would get waiverized from the state that would pay for you to go to these programs. But it's just a program. We don't program people. People are people. And I realized that I wasn't going to go to one of these places. So, like I said, I got that postcard from the self advocacy group, and I joined the self advocacy group to have a voice. So they asked me, that guy was coming to meetings. They asked me, would I come to the office? And I said, sure. Well, this is my basic on travel training to get out there and learn how the bus system works and how to get to point A to point B without people, showing you. It's support yourself. So I'm there, and what happens with that is it enhanced me. I saw these people once a week go up to our state capital, it was Harrisburg, to a state meeting that they were appointed by the deputy, and at that time it was the Office of Mental Retardation. Thank goodness we got rid of that R word, and it didn't say Republican. It meant retarded, and that's what they thought people were, retarded. And we use that as figures of speech. You're retarded, but do we really know what that word means? You know. So from there, I wanted to join like them and go up to Harrisburg, but they told me I couldn't. So one day we had this thing. It was called the PAC. They went up there. And after the PAC, they were going to transition over this thing called Everyday Life. That's what we have in Pennsylvania, a conference called Everyday Life. It happens every 2 years. It brings cross disability people together, providers, family members, and professionals, state people, county people, anybody you could think of would go to this conference once in a lifetime. So you go to this conference and you learn different things that are happening in the system. I got a scholarship to go, and I ran into my mentor. And people think, a mentor? Yes, you should get a mentor, somebody who could help you sit down and do stuff with you. My mentor wasn't a person with a disability. My mentor was a professional. He worked for the Office of Mental Retardation. He saw me. I spotted him, but didn't know who he was. He had a poster board, and he had a picture of this one guy on there in different places with him. And I asked him what he does. He said he worked for the states under family living, and he does employment. And he looked at me and says, what about you? Do you have a job? I said, yeah, I did. I used to put screws and nuts in a bag. He said, that's not a job. Well, they tell us it's a job when they need the job done. They just hurry up, get the job done. When it's not a job, it's a day program. But it was a day waste program. What did you do? Same thing all the time. So he said what he did, and I liked this guy. I liked him. I thought he could be my role model. Somebody, he doesn't have a disability, but he's willing to help me. The next thing I know, he came to our self advocacy board meeting, and they were sitting in, and he was with his supervisor. And he said, what's that guy doing out there? And they said, he's a volunteer. He helps us at the office. He runs the printer. He answers the phone. He runs and gets us coffee or our lunches. He's our runner. And he said, no, I want him to sit in with me and my boss. And they were talking abuse and neglect in the group homes where people with disabilities live. But what do we do to help people with disabilities to have a voice? And I told him, he thought, wow, look at this guy. What, that I can't shut up, or what came out of my mouth? I think it was a combination of both. And I was proud of myself. And next thing you know, we had our own conference for speaking for herself. And I was the co-chair, me and this other girl. She looked at her speech. I looked at my speech. I was going to introduce the guy who's going to get charged of the office of the R word. And she was going to introduce the lady who ran the Department of Welfare. It was, and then she gave me her speech. Said, Bill, can you hold my speech? She ran to the bathroom. And I said, come on, we're supposed to go on stage. She said, I'm scared. I said, so am I. She said, you can read my speech for me, can you? I said, well, and the lady came out. She said, Bill, did you study your words? You're going to go on stage now and introduce the deputy who runs everything. And I said, well, I looked at the speech and I said, she told me I had to read her speech. Can you do that too? Can you do both speeches? I said, well, I'll see what I can do. Before I got up stage, I walked away again. She said, Bill, you're supposed to get up there now. I ripped up the speech. She said, what are you doing? I said, this ain't me. People who know who I am know this ain't me. You wrote this about me. I can't say something that's not about me. And she looked at me and said, and I said, I don't want to go up there. She said, Bill, calm down, listen closely. Everybody out there is going to be naked. You don't have to worry. Everybody looks the same naked. Have you ever heard that expression people say? So what she and then guess what I did? I started unbuckling my shirt. I wanted to take off my tie because I never heard that expression. She said, Bill, what are you doing? I said, if they're gonna be naked, I want to be naked. She said, no, that's a figure of speech. So I said, okay. Then I put, buckled up my shirt again, fixed up my tie, went on stage. Here I am standing next to this guy. Now I'm only about 5'3", 5'4". He's about 5'8", 5'9". He's a tall guy, kind of chunky. And he looked over at me. I looked at him and smiled like, I don't know what to say. And then I started rattling things off that just came out of my mouth. I embarrassed this guy so much being on stage. I thought he was going to crucify me to the cross. But then he had a chance to talk. And after he's done his speech, this is how I got into really business like this. What I did is he said to his audience, I want to assign Bill to the PAC, and the PAC stand for the Plan Advisory Committee. I want to appoint him. I want each one of you to call me, email, get in touch with me somehow to remind me that Bill's going to be part of my committee. And that's how I got on the state levels of doing stuff. And from that, it landed me being on the Governance Affair for People with Disabilities here in Pennsylvania. For 8 years, I sat on a committee, giving these people advice how people with disabilities should be treated, what services should we need, what services out there that should be help us, and what doesn't help us. From there, I get a letter from Washington D.C. Guess who that was from? The president. And would you believe it was Barack Obama asking me to come down from this lady named Sharon Lewis, who is the person who ran the Developmental Disability Council across the United States. She said the president would like you to come, casual invite you to come down to test about work and work environments and day programs and workshops. And I said, well, if the federal government's money pays for workshops and we stop feeding the elephant the federal money, guess what happens? The elephant dies. I could speak whatever's on my mind. And I went down there, but the president never showed up. Joe Biden's never showed up. Joe Biden's wife, who's a psychologist, never showed up. It was a put down, but that didn't stop me. It didn't. So I talked what was on my mind. These people were impressed. They took notes. They took me off this side, treated me to lunch, wanted to know more. And I did this for several, months until the president, lost. He couldn't run anymore. So you can't be on his committee. You got to get appointed by the next person. And the next person was, yes, Donald Trump, the Republican. But you know what? Politics is politics. And that's how I got involved with, governments and what was going on. Not just my state, what other states are doing. So my dream is one day to have a universal waiver for people, no matter what disabilities they have, transported to state without being put on waiting lists to get that service again. They shouldn't be doing that. We know the McCosker law says the money follows the person, but that's only in state. That's not out state. So if you get services here in point A of your state and you go to point B of your state, the McCosker law says the waiver that you have should be portability. But mine's a universal waiver that anybody who has a disability, if I live here in Pennsylvania and I decided to move to Nevada, that my waiver should follow me, that I don't have to wait a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, wait till somebody dies for me to get moved up. That people with disabilities should get their needs based on what's out there. Anything else you want to know?
Sure, absolutely. So, you are so right. And you are such an incredible advocate. Just like I said, the way you deliver all of it is just so clear and so tangible. So explain though in further detail. So what is this waiver, and how exactly does this work, or how should it work? So explain and define this disability waiver you keep talking about.
Waivers are for people with disabilities. In the blind community, I'm sorry to tell you, there is no waiver, but the blind community has their allies that would help them. It's not for people that are hard of hearing or deaf. It's only for people with intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, and people with autism. A waiver is you waive your rights to be put in the institution. So, how would you want to be put in the institution or be safe living in the community? And it's cheaper to live in a community than be put in an institution. That's like putting people in a like we call them developmental. Some states call them developmental centers. We call them state centers. The mental health association calls the behavioral health. They all call them something different, but they all based on keeping you out. And every state has it. So ask your caseworker or your support coordinator of your state where you live to see if you're entitled, because this is a entitlement program. You may be put on it today on the waiting list, and the waiting list is of people waiting to get services similar like yours or maybe different are waiting to get it, and you have to be put on it. They say every state has over 15,000. Some states don't have waiting lists. You get the service based on your needs because you can get replaced what your wants are, but your needs are very important.
Right. So, in other words, just to make sure I'm understanding, so this waiver program, it was a way to prevent you from becoming institutionalized, or to prevent you, right? Correct?
Similar, yes. Yes, it's to keep you out of institutions.
Okay. So it was a form that would kind of say that you knew what your rights are, and you know that you should not be in an institution.
Well, some
Right.
people think
Yeah.
there's no other way of where else can you go. You don't, people,
Right.
like you said, people on fixed income, it fixes you. What do we do with people with disabilities? We're on SSI. We can't feed ourselves. We need food stamps. We can't pay our bills, so we go to Lottie. We can't pay rent. We go to Section 8 or HUD programs. So people with disabilities depend on the system. Why
Hmm.
depend on the system while you can have a life of your own? We get in trouble because we get married. The Marriage Penalty Act says two people on SSI get married, they get one check. People of the same sex, they get married, they don't ruin their checks. Why do people with disabilities get penalized? It's the mother may I system. You take 3 steps forward, and you say it again, mother may I take 5 giant steps, because you think you're getting away, but they say no, you take 5 giant steps back. So if they knock you down 5 times and you stand up 1 time, you're a winner because they ain't knock you down 5 times. And remember, your mind and your brain is like a sponge. You're hard headed in the beginning, nothing gets through it. Knowledge is water. Put the sponge in the water, suck up what you can, trickle out what you don't need, stay firm so you don't get burned.
Absolutely. So I think for some of our viewers and listeners who are only my age, because I'm 32, so for some of our people in the 30s, we don't really know. I mean, I know about this, but our listeners don't know much about institutions. Would you like to share with us the knowledge you have regarding to what you do know about institutions, a brief history of it, in America, and then what you do know about the very few institutions that still exist today, and why they obviously need to be shut down. But what can you really tell us about institutions?
Well, if you guys can look it up online, it's called I Go Home. It was based on a place called Penhurst in Pennsylvania, right outside this thing called King, the King of Prussia Mall, the King of Prussia area, in Springfield, Pennsylvania. People with disabilities, they always told your parents, you'll never raise them. He'll add up to nothing. He'll be a handful. Let the states take over. We'll raise him. He'll be around his own peers. All these things they made up for people with disabilities. And like I said, based on this thing, it was based on like there was a reporter and they knew there was something wrong. And he reported the institution called Penhurst. Willowbrook was another place
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
Gerardo exposed. And that's what bring national exposure. But local exposure here in Pennsylvania was a place called, like I said, Penhurst. Every state has institutions. Some states got rid of that. I think we should get rid of institutions because that money would go back to people to support them in other ways. Imagine keeping a bunch of people locked away, like it is similar like jail, and you have no rights. People tell you what to do. People tell you what to eat, what you can dress, what you can't dress, who you can have friends, who you can have friends. When I did this part of this documentary, if you guys see, it's called I Go Home. People look at me and say, "Oh my God, Bill, were you in an institution?" Because you talk about like you lived in one of these places, and I said, "Yeah," but the joke about it was no. I said, "Yeah," because living with your parents is like an institution. They tell you what to do. They tell you who you can have friends, who you can't have friends, when you can go out, when you have to be back home. They don't like the way you dress, tell you what you can wear. So I tell them, and they get a big kick out of it because they realize these places are no good. They're like dinosaurs. They're big and scary. And there's one thing they had that dinosaurs had: small brains like peanuts. But guess what? If you grab them by the nuts, see, I'm grabbing my hand and making a fist. You got them where you want them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a huge problem. Obviously, you're right. Penhurst, yeah, that was one. I mean, they were all really they were all bad places. And I do know I did. So I now is this documentary that you were interviewed in, Bill, was it called? So you say it's called like I Go Home is the name of it, and is that on YouTube? If I YouTube it, would I find it there?
You can look it on them. If you can't find it under, they only show bits and pieces. You should
Yeah.
look up my name, Bill Krebs. There's about 19 YouTube videos on my channel stream, and it's called Life. And when you find my name, you'll see me in a purple
Mm-hmm.
T-shirt, and it will
Already
say
did.
"Life with Mr. Trouble." And
Right.
one of the videos, it's an hour long, guys. If you can watch it, and you could put it in there, and it's called, like I said, I Go Home, and you'll see it. And then I made another version of it, my own.
Mhm.
It was only a 5 minute version of I Go Home because people thought when I did this because of the institution. I never been on that property. So me and my worker one day, he said, "Bill, what do you want to do today?" He thought I wanted to go to the casino because I like going to the casinos to meet people, to socialize and get out. And people say that's bad. Gambling's bad. Well, if you don't gamble, you don't get nowhere. It's like luck or the draw. So I said to him, "Let's go to Penhurst." So we Googled it, put it on MapQuest. We
That just
wind up
that
back
just
at the
that just gave
state
me
center.
shit. That just gave okay. That was quite okay. That's a questionable activity to do. Oh, you wake up one day. Okay, well let's
No,
just go to
because
this.
I
I
thought
know,
if
I
I
know.
did this documentary,
Mhm.
I want to see the place that I did it about and I talked about it. So
Right.
that's why. So we got up there. We're in back of the place, and it said that you would be locked up. So I thought it said we would be prostituted, and I'm saying we're going to sell our butts. He said that's not prostituted, not
Ah.
prostituted. So we get on this property, and I give him my cell phone and said, "Tape me." And there I was. We were afraid we would get locked up by the state troopers because we didn't know it was already sold to a private owner, and the private owner could have us locked up for trespassing. So we walked around the property for about 10 minutes and he's taping me. And it was after Halloween. So we all saw all these pumpkins. Now they call it the Penhurst Asylum, where they have during Halloween, they make it into a haunted house. And you shouldn't make a haunted house where people died in.
Oh
People
my God.
lived there, didn't know
No,
better.
no,
They
no,
think
no, no,
people, because you
no.
have a disability, there's something wrong with you, you're crazy or something.
That is
You
not
label.
that is not even that is an immensely offensively poor. That is deeply disturbing.
Yeah, that's why they say that shirt says label jars, not people. And that's how, like I said earlier, about how they sticker you with a sticker, and that's your
Right.
label. Visual
Mm-hmm.
impairness. Oh my God, you're blind. People don't know the difference. Or hard of hearing,
Mm.
deafness. In our community, it was being retarded. But do you really know what that word retarded is? When people say that about you,
Right. Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, if I mean, I definitely know of your playlist on your you put together a playlist on
it
YouTube.
was my worker. One day, he
Right.
said, "Bill, you're all spread out throughout the site. Like if
Mhm.
people wanted to look me up, they wouldn't know which one is me and which one went." So that's what he made the playlist. Got all my things together,
Right.
all my videos, and put them on one big
He
screen.
did. He did. He
And
did a
now
great job. Yeah, he did a really great. So I mean, guys, and you at home, just to clarify, and it's totally fine. Bill here, Bill, you do not have your own channel on YouTube. What it is that you and your friend have compiled a group of videos together and created a playlist on YouTube to which you are mentioned or a part thereof.
yes,
Yeah.
that's so people don't have to scramble around and try to find me. Just like I'm
Well,
on now. I just
I
started
know.
TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. It would be good though if you did have your own channel. You could call it, here's Mr. Trouble, or Bill Krebs or something like that. You know what I mean? If you had your own channel, then that you could just say, here's my channel. But don't worry, guys. We'll put the link of the playlist in the description, and then you can see his playlist. But that's fine. And then so in other words, this hour-long video where you go to this Penhurst, you're saying that video on the playlist is called "I Go Home," or
Yeah.
what is it called? Okay, all right, right.
Oh, I go home. You'll see, and you don't have to watch that one video. You have 19 to pick from,
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot
and
of choices.
I
You've been
expect my
you've been all
viewers
over. You've been
greatly.
all over. Yeah, no, you've done interviews with many channels. Um, that's why it's important. We'll even put. You can even put this video if you know how, or if you need help. You can ask a friend of yours to put up this
Well, he's in
video.
the hospital now.
Right.
He
No,
had
we're sorry to hear
he had
that. We're sorry to
cancer.
hear it. Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping he was my broker at one time. He was hired to be my broker because people now who have intellectual disabilities can
Mm-hmm.
direct their own services. So if you want to direct your services and you have an intellectual disability and take the money out of the provider's hand, and you could do what you want to do. For example, here in Pennsylvania, we job coaches $72.50 an hour. Well, you could hire your neighbor to be your job coach for $25 an hour. And the money you save, you could buy other stuff you want in the service. Mine goes for transportation. It gets me to work when I need to get to work by my worker when he was well enough to take me. Or I go by the local system, public transportation. And if public transportation can't, I build this thing called Uber, and Uber takes me the rest of the way, or takes me home, so I don't have to get a cab,
Indeed.
and take it out. And this is
I
how your
I have a
waiver dollars pay for it.
understood. I have a question about Uber. Have you ever faced any issues with the drivers, or have you ever sensed any discrimination from any of the drivers when it comes to them understanding your situation?
Well, they don't know my situation. They don't know I have a disability. They don't know who pays for it. All I have, it says bill to Palco, and Palco is the fiscal vendor who holds on to the money that the state gives them under me. So they really don't know unless I tell them, "Oh, I have a disability." Why would you tell somebody your disability.
Hmm.
You have to show them your possibilities, the things you can do, not what you can't do. That don't hold it as a crutch and you use it as a discrimination. I'm being discriminated because I have a disability. That's a pity party. You don't want no pity parties. You don't want to be
Surely,
the younger
surely
viewers.
not. No,
You
no.
wouldn't know a guy named
Right.
you wouldn't know a guy named Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis took advantage of people. Every year he had a telethon, the Labor Day telethon, raising money for people with disabilities, and that's not kosher. People with disabilities don't want to be treated any differently. So when you have a disability and you have a hidden disability, who's going to discriminate you? Yourself, or are you going to let somebody else do it for you?
Right, right. Absolutely. No, I totally understand your point. It's just sometimes, with us blind folks, us blind people have faced discrimination from Uber drivers, in my opinion. So I just kind of wondered, but that is
You,
fine.
you you see that anywhere, no matter what kind of
Hmm.
disability you have. It's how you want to be treated. I know Uber drivers don't want to take it because you have a dog,
Right.
and they don't want to
Precisely.
take the risk of the dog doing some damage. So they can cancel that ride if they don't like you. They don't have to
Right.
tell you, and you won't know it until you get back on your phone.
Right. Exactly. And our advocacy group for blind people, National Federation of the Blind, they've done a lot of work, fighting that and advocating, to.
Like I said, like I
Hmm.
said to you earlier, I went out with a girl who was blind,
Right.
and one day we went to a comedy works, and the comedy guy looks at the audience and looks for one vulnerable person. My friend that I was dating had two prosthetic eyes. So when you have prosthetic eyes, they only stay one stick in position. And he thought this is the great part. He's going to bust on this girl and make fun of her, and he was making fun of her, and the audience was laughing, and she had this scared look on her face. She didn't know, because when you're blind, you don't know unless you're visual impaired and you see shadows of somebody standing next to you. You would know they're talking about you. She didn't know. She was just saying, she would laugh when she wasn't supposed to be laughing. His jokes started bombing. When the show got done, he walked up to us and said to her, "I'm sorry I was picking on you." She said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I was pointing you out and pointing at you and saying things about you." "Oh, I thought you were talking about Bill." And she pointed over to me. So we take what people think we are. They look at us. Even if you have hidden disabilities, people judge you anyway. Like me, they say, "Oh, you're too high functional. You made me this way. You told me to join these committees. You told me to join these boards. You told me to go out and learn things. And now I start learning these things. I'm a threat to society because I know too much that you know." And I work for an agency called Keystone Human Services. I'm the advocacy coordinator. So when our people have problems, and go instead of going to the social worker or the case manager or to the executive director, to the director, or whoever they can turn to, they come to me, and they know they can get away with things with me. We go in my room. One girl said she wanted to scream because she was frustrated. I shut the door and said, "Now scream." She said, "I can't. I'll get in trouble, Mr. Bill." So I screamed for her. She said, "Oh, Mr. Bill, are you crazy?" I said, "No, I can't be crazy. If I was crazy, I would lose my waiver, because people who have mental health issues don't get waivers." And she started laughing about it.
Yeah, yeah. So what else can you tell me as far as going into more detail about this Keystone organization? What do they do? The history of it, what is your job
Well, the
description going
guy,
to?
to see,
Hmm.
I got this job was by accident. The guy who ran Keystone did the video "I Go Home Too." He used to work at the institution. He used to be one of these people walk around and help people out. And he said when he got out of there, when he wanted to start something to help people live in a community. The one I work for in Delaware, and I live in Philadelphia, I commute every day. We run group homes, and it gets people to keep them out of institutions so they can be around their own peers and do something with their peers. And this guy, I just liked the way he did business. He was always upbeat, always smiling. And I came up to him and said, "One day you're going to hire me." And he said, "What?" So I told him, "Let's do this example together. If you put your hands up in the air, anybody can. And then you look at them, and your fingers are the people we serve. So wiggle your fingers. They're the people we serve." And I said to him, "Now, in your organization, these people we serve, pull down your fingers of how many people work for our agency who have a disability. I'm going to count to 10, then remove your fingers and show me, give me a count of how many." He couldn't put anybody out there. He was so embarrassed. I said to him, "You should cut off your hands because you have nobody. Nobody has a disability. You support people with disabilities, but would you hire a person with a disability?" I've been here for 5 years. I got 4 different raises. I love what I do. It's better than anything that I could have. And it was called customized employment. So you take your dreams, what you want to do, you tell the job coach, and the job coach says, "Hey, Bill," he pointed to the bathroom and said, "You'll be working with John." I didn't know he meant by scrubbing toilets. You know where he's at now? He's working at McDonald's, flipping hamburgers instead of flipping people. Here I am at a corporate position at a nonprofit that I've been here for 5 years, and everybody loves me. They come to me, even the DSP workers, that come up to me and ask me for suggestions. How can I better my help my people? So now we get my people and the DSP people together to make a better world together to understand where we're coming from, to support each other.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, this is exactly what we all need to do. We all need to make improvements. And that's one thing that really stands out to me about your story. You realized that there were things that were not okay. And instead of feeling sorry for yourself, you just did the best you could and you moved up and you showed people that you can.
No
And
pity
that's
party. No pity
no,
party. Remember,
I
guys, don't ever
yeah,
have pity. Piss on pity. Don't pity on yourself.
right. Right. Exactly. Precisely. Yeah. Yeah. So, with you working in this field of, managing all these cases for people with a variety of disabilities, what are some issues that, are really near and dear to your heart, or some recurring issues that you're noticing that are really, that we really need to fix? What do you think are the key issues
Well,
right
I
now?
see. I
Hmm.
When I used to before I worked for this agency, I saw these girls. They come from Keystone. Didn't know they were from Keystone, and I went to this thing called the Arc. There are arcs all over the United States, and there could be one in your county. Just ask somebody, and they'll point it out. And these people would have a dance once a month, and it was in Delaware. Here, Bill Krebs lives in Philadelphia. Delaware for me is about 45 minutes to an hour drive. He don't drive. So my direct care worker, that I didn't call my direct care worker, would be my assistant. So people would know he's my assistant. They don't know what the word of a direct care worker. They think that you need more help if you tell them that. So we would go to this dance, and I would hold up the wall because I didn't know how to dance. I just went there to socialize. Whoever talked to me, I would talk to them. And I would see how the staff of other agencies would treat their people. One thing we do at our agency, we don't wear IDs, so you don't know we're staff. So here I am holding up the wall, watching these people. And then one day when I came down from Harrisburg, where my office used to be, now that was a 3 hour drive, a 3.5 hour drive, depending if you got stuck on the turnpike or we couldn't use the turnpike that day. And somebody pointed me out. They said, "There's that guy." And I said, "What?" And they told the supervisor, said, "That's that guy that holds up the wall." I said, and they said, and the girl came up to said, "Sir, are you the guy that holds up the wall?" I said, "Yeah." "Why do you hold up the wall?" "So it doesn't fall." "Oh, okay." She didn't, I didn't tell her I was bashful, and I was born with 2 left feet, really one left and one right, but I didn't tell her that I couldn't dance. So, and then you hear the staff, interacting like now they got to watch what they do around me because they don't want to do anything because they know I would report them. So that's what we had to do. We had to get the DSP workers who are undervalued, underrespected, underpaid to listen to our people while we listen to them. Make a partner together because they're the only things we have. If we don't have no family and we just came out of an institution and we don't have nobody to lean on and we wind up in this group home where this person works, to help us. They may not be family, but they're the only thing we have anymore next to family. So we want to partner up and don't yell at me. Don't scream at me. Don't treat me any differently. Say it in a normal voice. I may process it different than you do and understand it differently than you do, but the outcome will be the same outcome, no matter if it takes me a minute to do it or an hour later.
So good. So important for everyone in the community to hear from you. Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's see here. We do have a friend of ours in the audience, and of course I'm going to ask you first, but the other Aaron Kalinowski, is actually standing by. He's actually in the audience. Would you like me to bring him up to the microphone so he can talk if he would
Sure,
like?
more the merrier.
Okay,
He can talk about me. Well, he knows me.
Well, it depends on who the more is. That's what that depends on. Let's see here. So, Aaron, I just pushed your unmute. You are welcome to join us here in the conversation, Aaron.
Of course.
Sure, go ahead, Aaron. So, I'll step back from a second. So, I'm sure you have, after listening to Bill's beautiful and fascinating story, I'm sure you have some questions and some things that you want to get off your chest and say. So, go ahead, talk for a bit, Aaron. Go ahead.
So I mean, in a way, it's quite profound on how far we've came from the days of institutions, and at the same time that we realize that there still work needs to be done. And when it comes to that, like, what work do you think needs to be done? Even in organizations that are trying to help people with disabilities, Bill.
Do you mean that once we get them out of the institution and they go to providers, and the providers should be helping them to understand what their rights are? Don't just shove them a piece of paper and say, this is your client's rights, sign here, and you don't know what you're signing. Make it simple formats that people can understand. Some people understand differently. You should make it a pictures, big print, accessibility for people with disability to understand stuff,
Absolutely.
Because they used to be told what to do instead of trying to figure out themselves what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite something that's profound that we've all dealt with. And it's been quite the journey for sure. And as I've known you for a lot longer, it's quite profound, like, on how much you've accomplished over the last 8 years, ever since you were represented for trying to think, my bad.
Don't worry, it will come out.
That when you represented for Philadelphia, something like that.
Well, my organization does Moldova, does India, does Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. That's where we have offices all over.
Yeah. Right. So in other words, Bill, this nonprofit that you're working at now, it's actually a national company. So there's offices like all over the country that are doing this
Not all over
important
the
work.
country, just 2 countries, India and Moldova, that we support.
Okay.
We supported the refugees who were in the other state that Russia's fighting against Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are coming into Moldova to do refugees to have a place to stay, and and our organization's over there supporting people with disabilities to get a voice, because we all know about the ADA, right? The
Yes.
ADA
I
was
do,
made
yes.
for people with physical disabilities. Nothing against people who have intellectual, developmental, or autism or Asperger's. It was made because look at one of the things the ADA says: must have cutout ramps. People with intellectual disabilities don't need cutout ramps. It was all the physical disabilities. When they made that movie Crypto, when the people stormed the Capitol in Washington D.C. in wheelchairs and climbed up the steps and had that was a bunch of people who had physical disabilities. There was nobody with Down syndrome there. There was no autistic people there. There was a limited blind people there or deaf people there, you know? So we were left out in some ways when the ADA was signed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
and if you're like Bill Krebs and you have an intellectual disability and you get high functional, you're a troublemaker. You're a trouble in the system. But if you're a person with autism and you don't have meltdowns no more and you don't have breakdowns no more and you try to hold a job, you're Asperger's. They don't do that. People with intellectual disabilities. Then the other theory is people with mental health have peer specialists. People with intellectual developmental or what do they call them, Down syndrome people, we don't have peer specialists. Why can't we have peer specialists? It's like if we picked up a drug, we could get addicted. We pick up a beer, we could be an alcoholic. I could have a breakdown and be in mental health, but your first label is your first label, whatever they label you. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of stereotypes with disabilities. People are like, when we closed down here in Philadelphia, we closed down Byberry State Hospital. It was an institution for people with mental health. Those people wind up on the streets. They didn't get a waiver. So people who closed down the Altoona Center was the first center to close in Pennsylvania. Some of them got moved out to Everyburg to another institution, or the provider would take them. The provider's test was, if you could tie your shoe, you can live with us. If you can't tie your shoe, we don't want you because we need 2-to-1 staff and they don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All really important and all really, really interesting. Sure, sure. Yeah, we'll definitely include Bill's playlist in the description, along with too, Bill, if you can maybe send along some information about the organization you're working for, so I can definitely cite them in the description too.
Well, if
That,
any of our audience want me to come out to their audience, wants me to come
mm-hmm,
out to their agency, I'll
mm-hmm.
be glad to do some work with them. I just came back from Sacramento, California, to see the governor out there because they have silos that people go for one-stop shop when you have a disability to get what you need. And I asked the governor there, how many people in the silos have a disability that works for your agency? He couldn't answer me. And that's barriers that everybody has, no matter what kind of disability you have, is jobs, housing, relationships. They all come down together. No matter who you are or what disability you have, we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, all this is really, really well done, really spectacular. No, I was just saying though that maybe I would like the website or the link of the organization that you are working for, so people can research it online. Yeah, if you can send me that, if you like that may be good. So Bill, what are some of surely you have some hobbies. So what are your hobbies that you like to do? Some things that maybe I wouldn't
Cause
expect
trouble.
you to do.
Cause trouble. But
That's
really,
a
my
good,
hobbies is to travel,
yeah,
get out and see the world. When I go to different conferences, I learn what other states are doing to support people with disabilities so we can incorporate it in our state and other states to partner together to do a better life, to have a better life. So I like doing that stuff. sometimes I like going to the casinos, people watch, play myself,
Oh yeah.
And one of the things on my bucket list was to go to Vegas. I wind up in Reno, right down the block from Vegas. Then next thing you know is I'm at Vegas. I finally made my dream come true to go to Vegas to see what it was. Because people say Atlantic City is nothing. Because I live like an hour and a half away from Atlantic City. Because I live in Philadelphia. When I went to Vegas, I was like, "Wow, this is bigger than Atlantic City without the boardwalk."
Yeah. Certain cities have certain cities have passed their prime.
Well, see, every state now just about has a casino. And I say to every governor that they should, when they legalize casino in their state, that some 10% of that money should go back to end the waiting list for people with disabilities who need services, no matter what
Sure.
service it is. And that's how we can raise money to end waiting lists campaign,
Absolutely.
for that state, because they had to pay a fee and taxes to open a casino. So why couldn't we do that? No matter who it is or what state it is,
Yeah, right.
Because I realized when I was in Ohio, I bought a scratch off and I read the back and said 10% of the portion goes back to Veterans Affairs to help support the veterans in Ohio. So why couldn't we do stuff like that across the United States?
Yeah, or set up some yeah, I mean there's a lot. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's a great argument for casinos that they could potentially bring in a certain amount, a certain amount of profit to help these agencies that clearly need help, and things like that. So
Well, when the pandemic hit, it shut down a lot of mom and pop places and the DSP workers. Like when I was like I said, I just came back to Sacramento, California, where the DSP worker is getting less than like $17.50 an hour. They can go to Jack in the Box and get paid $20 an hour without their less aggravations of having a 50 caseload or 100 caseload to deal with people with disabilities. One person can't do it all.
Right. Absolutely. So, Bill, I'm sure that you have some questions for me, and I know you can make me sweat. So, what do you really want to ask Aaron Richmond right here?
Okay, tell me, when you were young, were you always blind, or did it came on later in life?
Sure, wonderful. I was born blind with glaucoma. I have Peters anomaly plus syndrome, meaning that there is.
Can you tell me what that is? Some of
Yes.
the audience don't know these big fancy words like you would know, but you lived it.
Well, that's true. Well, Peters anomaly is basically a syndrome where, in my case, I have something wrong with my eyes, the glaucoma issue, and I also have something wrong with my heart. Peters anomaly can also impact other parts, other aspects of health. It can also impact mental, the brain and things like that. So I only have Peters anomaly that affects my eyes and my heart. If you would like to learn about the advocacy that I've been through, you would appreciate very much two articles, and I will send them to you. But basically, about 20 years ago, my family had to stand up for me in the public school system, and we ended up having to go to due process, and it was a very high profile case of the day. This was 20 years ago. But yes, that's basically my journey, and that I've also, in a very different way from you, but in a very similar way to you, I have been through not all the things you have, but similar things. Being isolated at school through schooling. I was always isolated my whole life, really. And that really holds people back. That's a huge factor, that really affects me now that I'm an adult. I understand why that's wrong, but those are some of the experiences I've had, and I've been through college and graduated with a degree and all of that. And that was very trying, very, quite frankly, very traumatic. And I've been through that. And I work as a teacher and a podcast host and things like that. And I completely agree with you. Everything has really, for many years, has gone downhill since the pandemic, but now we're starting to get more stable and things like that. So that's a little bit about me. And if you want to learn more about me, well, why don't you go download the next episode of Aaron's Opinion, wherever you get a podcast? We know that we'll have you in our audience, in the Aaron's Opinion family, and you're forever welcome here, man. You really are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me here.
So welcome. Any other questions for me? Because you asked a great one. Any other great questions that you want to ask?
So do you think people with disabilities usually get stuck with people with disabilities when it comes to relationships? Because they're the only ones that know us, that would accept us. We can never go out with the professional. Have you ever had your lifetime go out with somebody who didn't have a disability, who treated you different because you have a disability? Because I know when I went out with somebody, they talked to me really slow, and then I talked really slow back to them. They said, "Bill, are you mocking me?" I said, "No, are you mocking me? Who's mocking who?" And they didn't know what to say. So do you think that's what happens to most people with disabilities? Why not?
I don't know. And the reason I don't know is that I have been so socially isolated in my own personal life that I have never dated. So I don't know about that. I want to date. I have dreams, obviously, we all do, to have, a healthy relationship with a woman, things like that we all men would speak of, things like that. But I don't know enough about it to know what the statistics are behind it. I suspect that many people with disabilities are alone their entire life. After mommy and daddy kick you out of the nest at some point. In many cases, many people are getting thrown into, like you said, group homes, or you end up by yourself in a, 1-bedroom apartment somehow. But it's a serious problem that a lot of these blind people or people with other disabilities are more than likely alone for their life, which is definitely not healthy. Aaron, not to put you on the spot over there, do you have any insight in that question? Because Bill asked a great question. I'm just not qualified to answer, Aaron. Do you have insight on that?
I don't have too much, but I can say personally that I know that there's a great YouTube channel out there which is of an interabled couple that I like. Two YouTube channels I know of that are of interabled couples that would be able to give a better perspective on that. Mainly me think I'm trying to think of the channels. Give me a minute. The channels were give me a minute. Let me think. I know there's many different channels that do discuss like when it comes to one person being disabled and the other not being so, and and there's quite many of them out there that I think would help. I think there are many that help in filling in that discussion and all that. And so yeah, like like for example, like Squirmy and Grubs, and a whole bunch of other channels.
Yeah, I did see that channel at one point. I do know what you're. I don't really know about them, so we aren't. I would like to not dwell on it at this particular second. But when you said that, I do vaguely remember seeing that channel, and I just don't know enough about it. So I don't know, guys. You at home, what do you think about dating with a disability and what Bill was saying about? Do we oftentimes end up with someone with a disability, or do we oftentimes end up with someone who's able-bodied but still discriminates against us and judges us because of the disability? It's hard to know. Yeah, I don't know. Well, anyway, Aaron, thanks for introducing me to our great friend in the community here, Bill. And
That's
Bill, thank
Mr.
you.
Trouble to you, Mister.
Thank you for introducing us to Mr. Trouble, Mr. Bill,
Absolutely.
Mr. Trouble Krebs. Yeah, Bill, Mr. Trouble Krebs. That'll be definitely in the title somehow. So if someone wants to get in touch with Bill, Mr. Trouble Krebs, how would they get in touch with you?
It's easy. It's my first name, Bill dot Krebs at Ymail, folks, not Gmail. I have a special account just set up for me called
What?
Ymail. So it's Bill dot Krebs at Ymail.com.
Okay.
And people say, why? Why a Ymail? Because I'm not a G person. I'm a Y person. Why? Because we love you.
I love it. Aaron, did you get a kick out of that too the first time he told you that? That is material.
Yeah, that is comedy gold.
Yeah, because everybody thinks it's Gmail, and they try to send it to me, and I said, well, it bounced out, Bill. What do I send it to? I said, Ymail. Didn't I tell you why?
I'm really fast. So how did you create a Ymail? How do you even set that up?
Well, see, Yahoo at the time before they were bought out by Google had a thing out there. They were like undervalued. They were understocked. So, and they used to have a big billboard in Times Square, and they weren't really like Google's property. And so they were like getting people to think of new ways. Like, I don't know if our audience remembers AOL. You got mail, American Online. And all they clicked and said, you got mail. They were their competition. So they asked people, what would you do differently? I said, they were coming out, different ways to promote their thing. So I said, I want a Ymail. Why? Because I really want it. Why? And it's always asking people why. What comes first? Why? We always ask people why. So guess what? Here's my mail. Ymail, not Gmail.
All right. Well, this episode will have a huge impact in a positive way on so many people. I mean, you guys are going to love it, and this is going to be a really it's just been a fascinating talk with you, and just the best part is your personality that you plug into your knowledge. You're completely plugged in.
Well, you don't want, like I said, you want to laugh about things instead of take things serious, because life is too short. I said to my audience one time that, your name is not Doubt and your last name is not Thomas. So you're not a Doubt and Thomas. So get it straight. No pity parties. You're not a Jerry Lewis kid or nothing. So what it is, so whatever's, so think positive, have an upbeat about your life. No matter how your disability stops you from doing it, there's somebody else out there doing the same thing, but doing it in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me, Bill, Mr. Trouble Krebs. I'm never going to forget you now. And you're going to get into my WhatsApp group and definitely cause some trouble over there, right? You have WhatsApp,
yeah,
right?
Maybe I'll be in a state near you, my audience or your audience, causing more trouble.
Right. Maybe. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. And I really learned, we really learned a lot. And you're just keep up your great work and keep putting up YouTubes. You'll put up this one on your playlist, and you're gonna keep doing the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do you know how I end an episode here at Aaron's Opinion?
You talking to me?
Yes.
What's that?
Well, I say thank you for joining us. Come back next time. Take care. Keep podcasting out there and help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow. For those of you who are still on the YouTube side of this with Bill, Mr. Trouble Krebs, thank you for joining us. Again, we covered a lot today. It was a serious episode. We covered a lot of great material. So don't be shy. Don't be shy. Comment below and ask great questions, because that's what we really appreciate, and that's what will move us forward in life. So go ahead, like the video, ask questions in the comments, subscribe to the channel, tickle the bell notification to know when we go live next. I will definitely be sending you guys the video, which of course is yours to share. And so thank you. Come back anytime. All right, have a very good evening to Bill, Mr. Trouble Krebs, and Aaron, our great buddy that connected all of us together. Thanks again. Ditto over to you and your podcast, man. And we'll be back soon. Yep. All right, everybody. Well, take care. Have a great night. And we'll see you in the next episode. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow.